So what we do is we measure the pH of the urine of the animal, just to try and get an indication of the protein. Obviously the protein in the grass is still very low because of the drought, so there's not much green material. So we supplement that with a lick to get the protein from what they call crude protein, which is natural protein, and then also urea as well, which keeps the stomach going and the whole thing, all the microorganisms. So we just try and measure. We're looking for 6.5 to 7. This is sort of on 6 at the moment. It's a little bit low in protein. So the challenge of this time of the year, though, is that because your green shoots start coming out, the animals actually start chasing the green, and they don't graze a lot of the other fiber around. So it is a bit of a challenging time of the year, that change of season process. So, but this is just a good little indicator to see whether your supplemental licks and stuff that you're giving are sort of on track to keep the animals healthy. And these heifers are now they'll be a year old now in November. You've got all your elements, your potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, manganese, iron, copper. So it's basically a complex mix to make up for the shortage, the fact that there isn't protein and a lot of energy in the grass. But our whole emphasis in doing pasture cropping, and what we're trying to do with the whole mixing of the pastures and getting that system more viable and diverse, is trying to reduce the cost of supplemental feed and start getting the animals to get these essential elements from the actual soil. So the more healthier your soil is and the more balanced your soil is, and the more available these minerals and nutrients are to the actual plant, the more it'll basically create an environment where the animals can then get what they need in their body from the actual plant versus a supplemental feed like this. If you don't have enough protein activity in your rumen, there's not enough protein to feed the microorganisms in the stomach of the cow, which means those microorganisms actually start dying off, and then whatever food or fiber comes into the rumen isn't being able to be digested and actually work and be broken down. And then what you get is I think it's rumen stasis, I think it's called, speak under correction, but I think that's the term, where the actual rumen system just shuts down because there's not enough activity and breakdown of the fiber and everything else that's been eaten. And that's the biggest problem we had with the organic process, is that the European standards were being applied to southern African standards, where what we call more of a brittle climate. In other words, we have more extremes, and we also don't have a very high nitrogen load in the southern hemisphere, whereas in the northern hemisphere you have a much higher nitrate load. So that's why your grass, for example, in Switzerland, these places, is always green year round, because there's a lot of nitrates in the soil naturally as well, and they got to be. And obviously doesn't want to overcompensate with that. But in Africa, and specifically southern Africa, you've got a deficiency, so you've got to then create an artificial environment for nitrates in terms of artificial protein, and that's why you use stuff like this. But we're trying to get it the plant can provide as much of that requirement as possible in, for example, the climate that it is at the moment, where it's so cold. The plant's ability to provide protein and green growth is obviously limited because of natural factors. And I mean, you can feel this wind. I mean, this wind's cold. So whatever the animal really eats now goes into the outer body, just to conserve. The energy's been burnt up to try and maintain warmth. So you want to, hence the fact that for example, now I've just moved them into a camp where there are valleys and there's places that they can get away from the wind chill. I think wind chill plays a much bigger factor than we'd like to always recognize. It is in the dead of winter. It is just before season change, so they'll come back very quickly in about a month's time. When we hopefully get some more moisture and green growth, they'll recover quite quickly. And then obviously, especially for female animals like this, body condition is essential to the production of production of eggs for reproduction. Any natural system, there's a hierarchy. So you'll get a dominant animal. She's usually the one that comes in first. She generally will bully the weaker animals away. So if there's enough feeding space, even the weaker animals can then get the nutrition they need. Otherwise they won't. They'll stand back and they'll basically regress, and your stronger animals, your more dominant personality, will then obviously be the faster grower and the bigger grower. They're not rushing for the feeding troughs, so it shows that they're content. In other words, there's not the storming effect. If there was, then you'd know there's an unbalanced process in terms of the way they're eating and in terms of what they're actually getting in. The fact that they're calm and they're not shoving and pushing and all the rest of it means that their systems are working.